Welcome back. Getting arrested and ending up in jail is scary, and not being able to get out of jail, even if you can't afford bail, even scarier.
Yeah, this summer, the Missouri Supreme Court put bail reforms in place. Well, now judges can't keep low-level offenders in jail just because of their inability to make bail. There's another aspect of the reforms that isn't sitting well with some groups. Fox 4's Alana LaFleur explains why a risk assessment tool is causing a stir.
A risk assessment tool is basically a list of questions aimed at predicting if an offender will show up for their court date. Does the person work? Which state do they live in? Those are some of the questions. If you're arrested and you end up here, there are a few options. Make the bail a judge set for you if they set one, or wait it out until your court date while you're still presumed innocent.
I think you're going to see some meaningful change there.
That's how it was in Missouri until July 1st. J.R. Hobbs is an attorney. He's on the Criminal Justice Task Force appointed by the Missouri Supreme Court, which made recommendations to the court about bail reforms. Now, judges have to look at other non-monetary bail conditions for low-risk offenders eligible for pretrial release.
A risk assessment tool is an algorithm that takes in factors about one's background, their history, their prior convictions, the nature of the offense, as to whether they're a good risk to appear in court or to pose a threat to the community.
Although the Missouri Supreme Court's tool is still being developed and isn't in use yet, it's already getting criticism from several groups, including the American Bail Coalition. Jeff Clayton is the group's president.
We're asking to push the reset button. We're asking the legislature and the governor's office to say enough is enough. We're taking this away from the courts and we're putting it back where it belongs, which is in the political branches of the government.
He wants to see more studies on the topic and is skeptical that the tool will work.
I don't think anybody's calling for more incarceration. People are calling for less. And the risk of these rules is that we're going to see more.
Another issue Clayton has with the risk assessment tool is the potential for bias.
Where we get into problems is we start using demographic factors, things like do you own a home or not? Are you mentally ill or not? Which we think violates the Americans with Disabilities Act and is used in some states. So it's when we get away from that, I think we end up having problems. The other thing is these things, and we've seen this, they overpredict dangerousness of African American and Hispanic defendants, period.
The ACLU is also against the use of any risk assessment tools for the same reason. Organizer Justice Gatson claims the tool won't actually predict if someone will or will not show up to court.
If you're in an over-policed neighborhood anyway, and one of the questions on the assessment tool is, have you been arrested before? Well, it's highly likely that a person of color could have been arrested before, whether or not it's warranted. And that would be a strike against them.
In light of the criticism, J.R. Hobbs and the other members of the task force wrote an open letter to clarify the bail reforms and the risk assessments.
Well, the risk assessment tool isn't adopted yet. It's because we're looking at all the factors. Or you want to make sure that there's a correct risk assessment tool.
Over in Kansas, in Johnson County, the jail system uses its own risk assessment tool for people charged with crimes who are likely to be given probation. They started doing that in 2014.
There's potential questions to help the interviewer, but then also a little bit of guidance on what to be looking for before you give somebody a yes answer.
This is the assessment and an explanation of the different factors. People are ranked as either low, moderate, or high risk for failure to appear in court.
We want to maximize public safety. We would like to eliminate unnecessary incarceration. And finally, we would like to increase court appearances.
A group of pretrial stakeholders in Johnson County meets regularly to review the data from the risk assessments and to see if it promotes bias against certain groups, as the ACLU and American Bail Association claim.
And it's something that we need to be mindful of. In order to predict, you have to base it on the past. And so if there's disparity in the base population that you're drawing this information from, then you're at risk of having racial disparity in your tool.
When the risk assessment tool is developed and is given to judges to use, UMKC criminal justice professor Lindsay Abernoth Clancy says there's something to remember.
It's important to note that risk assessment would just be one tool available to judicial officers. So a judge wouldn't have to use the risk assessment. It would just be at their disposal.
Missouri's risk assessment tool is supposed to be ready by this time next year. Alana LaFleur, Fox 4 News.
The Missouri Department of Corrections, which oversees prisons, not jails, already uses the Ohio Risk Assessment Tool, which predicts recidivism.